Hurricane Ian was a large and destructive Category 4 Atlantic hurricane. It was the deadliest hurricane to strike the state of Florida in 87 years. Ian caused widespread damage across western Cuba and the southeast United States, especially the states of Florida and South Carolina. So far, there have been 137 confirmed fatalities, with 126 of those being in Florida. My guest is Bruce Stevens from Englewood, Florida. He and his wife Marilyn decided to ride out this massive storm in their home. Englewood is located about halfway between Fort Myers and Sarasota on the west coast of Florida. You will hear firsthand of what goes into the decision of whether to leave or stay when the hurricane of hurricanes is approaching. You also hear the raw emotion of a man who experiences the horror firsthand and the devastation the day after, and is grateful to be alive to tell the story. Humanity in its purest form began to rise from the heaps of destruction. People helping people. People expressing kindness to people. People sacrificing for their neighbor. The information about big box stores and corporations stepping up to the plate and serving their community will get your attention. And the local businesses who sacrifice their own profits for their community. You understand in a new way why it is important to support those places of business and pray that internet shopping will not eventually put them out of business or even limit their ability to do what they can do in the middle of a storm. I believe you will have a new appreciation for ministries such as Samaritan's Purse, Joyce Meyer Ministries, the Salvation Army, the Red Cross, and all the others who put their money where their mouth is during the biggest crises of life, and their volunteers and all the other volunteers who stop their own lives to help others rebuild theirs. If you think just a little, you also see some huge God lessons here, life-changing lessons. We all go through storms in our life, storms not of literal wind and water like Ian, but storms of emotion, heartache, and spiritual attacks that could be called Ian. We have to decide whether to leave or to stay. We know that our own storms have a way of binding us together with others when incredibly it takes such a storm to do so. We're also reminded that a few people take advantage of us in our storms, but most want to be there for us. We're also reminded that we need to be there for others during their storms. We understand, as terrible as things are, when one is in the middle of the storm, a new day is coming. The sun will come up again. Then we will have time to look back and learn and be grateful for all we went through that eventually gets us to where we are. Make no mistake, as difficult as it is for us, God is teaching us during these storms. The bigger the storm, the bigger the lessons. Thank God for the lessons of the storm.
Lizzie Scott and her mother Kim moved to Englewood, Florida, along the western coast of Florida. They endured 150 miles per hour winds during the major storm, which devastated much of the area. Scott said people are struggling to adjust to the living conditions there.
It doesn't look the same, and it's just weird living everyday life and only having very few places to go. One grocery store, one bar is open right now, but it's extremely complicated and heartbreaking to have to go through.
Viewing life from a hearse, it could be worse. Laugh, think, and cry with the country undertaker.
So you listen to Bruce Goddard, and this is the View from a Hearse podcast. I've got with me my wife's first cousin, Bruce Stevens. Bruce and Kathy, my wife, their mothers were sisters, very close as sisters can get. They were that for sure. So, Bruce, thank you for joining me. Bruce was in the middle of Hurricane Ian. He lives in Englewood, Florida. So if you look at your map, and Bruce will talk about this, that's exactly where that hurricane hit. And Bruce, before we get into that, I just want to kind of introduce you and let people understand. I know you and I are the same age. Of course, I've known you for 50 years, but you were retired and you moved from Hampton, Virginia, which was on the Atlantic coast when you retired, right? And you moved down to the west coast of Florida. So have you had hurricane experience? Have you been in some of these things before?
Yes, Bruce, I'll tell you, just, street cred or hurricane cred maybe. But yes, when I was up in Virginia, we was hit with 3 hurricanes there. And we came here thinking maybe on the West Coast we'd be all right. But no, we got hit twice since I've been here. So I personally sat through 5 of these things.
Unbelievable.
And in addition to that, I trade. I'm an architect engineer. And so I also do hurricane wind adjusting. And so I've done 2 additional hurricanes in addition to the 5 I've sat through. So I've seen a lot of hurricane damage. And I'll tell you, there's a gentleman, I can't remember his name right now, but he's the emergency manager for Charlotte County here in Florida, the county I live in. And he had one motto that he tried to teach people about hurricanes. And that is that you run from the water. You hide from the wind.
Right.
And so if you know you're on high ground, if you know you're not going to take that tide surge, which was our situation, we didn't leave. We didn't run. We stayed in the house because we knew the house was high and we knew the house was built to withstand the hurricanes.
Right.
Because it was built to the new Florida codes and the house held.
You had sense enough to know whether you could stay or run, and you've been through all this before. You're an engineer, so you had this figured out. So tell me, when this thing started coming, was it worse than you thought, or were you expecting what you got, or kind of talk through that?
There's no way to describe it. All the hurricanes, that we've had, I've had them, but, by the time they get you, you got some hurricane force winds. I know we've had winds 100 mile an hour and seen it push over trees, but 150 plus is,
I can't even.
I don't know. There's no way to describe. The thing with this one too was it was slow. I mean, I believe it was about noon, 11:30, noonish. We lost our power. So after that, we didn't know where it was. We didn't know how it was moving. We knew that it was supposed to make landfall somewhere close to us and somewhere around, 1:45, 2 o'clock. But at that time when we lost power, we was already, because I was on my weather radar, we was right at 71, 72 miles an hour winds sustained at that point. That was 2 hours before landfall. We sat through that eye wall, and I know we was under 100 plus. It had to have been 4 to 6 hours.
Yeah, some people said this thing lasted like 8 hours, right? I mean, there were 8 hours of stress, right?
Yeah. I'm thinking from the time we first got to hurricane force winds until the time we got out of hurricane force winds, which is 74 miles an hour, was probably at least 8 hours. During the time, starting the morning it was coming in until my rain gauge broke, I know we had recorded right at 19 inches of rain. And I know that it rained for at least 4 or 5 more hours, as hard as I've ever seen it rain.
I can't even imagine. So you were without power. You really didn't know exactly what was going on, so you were in the dark more than physically in the dark. You were in the dark, so I'm sure you had to be frightened at all this when it kept going, right? Talk about that. And Marilyn, too. What was she doing in the middle of all this? Marilyn is his wife, by the way.
Well, she was there, and I can't say we was afraid, not as you're afraid for your life. You know, you just didn't know what you was going to face when you came out. It got dark real early, but normal sunset around here is probably around 7:20 right now. You know, and it gets dark maybe 8 o'clock. But it was maybe 6:30ish or so. We couldn't see anything anymore because the clouds were too thick. It was just dark. And so it was still under hurricane force winds, and you're in the total darkness. You hear stuff hitting your house. You hear it hitting your roof. You know, you start wondering next, well, is the roof going to hold me?
I'm sure.
You know, and the thing that was, you know, that's where I was talking to my son, Scott. My son, Scott, also sat through this in his house. And he tells me the worst part was he was alone. His wife and children evacuated. He is a store director for a Walmart, so he needed to be here and, you know, get it back up for the community just as fast as he could.
Right.
And he was just telling me, just being in that dark for him with no communication whatsoever, and you don't know what's happening outside. You don't know where it's at. Right. You know, we don't know if it backed up or kept going.
Or how long it was going to be there.
Continuously beating.
Yeah. Incredible.
I think the most emotional part was the next morning. I mean, as soon as there was the first crack of light, it was like,
I understand. Listen, I can't imagine. I can't imagine what you've been through.
You know, when you come out and you wonder what's left.
Yeah.
You know, you're But it's like, you know, first light. You first see the light come out, and you start, you know, opening your doors. You don't know what's out there.
Right.
You know, and you walk out, and you know, you see your fence is gone. You see all your landscaping gone. And, you know, at the same time, you're glad you're safe. And, you know, you live in a neighbor's house, and you know that they took even more damage to their house than you did. You know, I had one neighbor that it ripped all his shingles off down his plywood, which then meant it rained in his house the whole time. You know, our roof held. But it was just like everybody was crawling out from under their houses or, you know, whatever. Yeah. And just looking, you know, I don't know.
Wow. Were there people that lost their life near you?
Yeah, Lori Fisk has several fractured bones in her leg. She is beat up physically and certainly emotionally. It's hard to believe she's even still alive today. And once you hear more of her story, you'll understand why.
A lot of images that I can't unsee, can't forget.
I thought you were honestly dead for a day or two until I got a hold of your son.
I know. I did. A lot of people did.
She was with her friends, Bonnie, Melissa, and Nick. They were boarding up the restaurants where they worked in Times Square.
You look like you're having the time of your life.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, what else are you going to do? Cry? Got to pack everything up, get ready for this, and hope for the best.
24 hours later, water was spilling onto the second story.
At that point, I was like, all right, like, we got to come up with a game plan, too. Like, if we got to go, we got to go.
Powerful currents kept smashing the house.
Then we turned around. The pink house. And another surge came the opposite way, and the house smacked in. The pink house hit our house, and then we all looked up. Nick looked up, and I looked up. The whole house had cracked all the way down.
She grabbed Bonnie, who she says wasn't a good swimmer.
I went to go jump, and the water came in from the backside, swished me out. I went under the house. The house came down on me. And I saw Bonnie underwater.
They went under several more times.
And then I got clocked in the head again. And then all I saw was her going this way. And I went under, and then I came up, and there was nobody.
She managed to crawl onto a roof with an air conditioning unit.
Took the plastic, put it over my head, and grabbed the foil metal part, swung that over so it kind of protect me, like hopefully from the side, and just held on there for like it seemed forever.
After a few failed attempts, she made it into a nearby house that was still standing.
Grabbed a couple towels, I apologize, dried off, used your bathroom, and then grabbed another towel and went back down and decided, like, I got to get back.
Eventually, she found her friends in a nearby condo.
Melissa heard my voice, and she screamed, and she came around the corner. So, like, all three of us just held on to each other for a while. And then I had to tell him I couldn't find Bonnie. Nick was right there in his face. And he kept saying, I'm looking at a ghost. I'm looking at a ghost.
I just got chilled. It was like seeing a ghost.
Ty Woolley was there too. How did you survive?
By the grace of God.
That pink house that split her house in two came from across the canal.
How she found her way, it was just a miracle. It really, truly was.
It's mind-blowing to go back to that beach. It's like, wow. How did anybody make it? And a lot of people didn't.
Like Bonnie.
She's like my sister from another mother. That's what we told everybody.
This is where her friends found her, still holding onto a tree. Ty put the cross here.
Loving mother, loving grandmother, amazing friend. She's really going to be missed.
Lori told me at least 10 friends she knows didn't survive. And this whole ordeal happened over the course of about 8 hours, 3 of which she was swimming, by the way. So when I say she's a fighter, I really mean it. And if this tells you anything about Lori, she said even after all of this, the thing that she is mad about most is the fact that she can't help anybody else right now. Certainly says a lot about her character. Reporting live on Fort Myers Beach, I'm Kyla Gaylor for NBC2. Back to you guys.
I know that people in the county have lost their lives. I know that other counties have lost lives. I personally feel like they haven't found them all yet. But, that's just my own feeling. But we have seen in Florida, you see a lot of what a lot of people call, 55 and over, communities that's built with modular homes. And they're cheaper, and a lot of retirees can move into them, for a decent amount of money. But they're basically mobile homes.
Right.
They're pre-manufactured homes. It's been strapped to the ground with, straps, and people have built sunrooms and, pergolas and carports and everything else off of them. And they're all just basically aluminum. And, there's neighborhoods that I've seen that I don't know what's left. All I can see at the end of the street is just a massive pile of aluminum. You see trailers laying on their side. So I'm sure there was some people nearby that lost their lives. I'm just not aware.
I'm sure also the other thing that came out of this is just the goodness of mankind as everybody began to help one another.
Bruce, you're absolutely correct. The things that I see is good in humanity. I see much, much more of that than I do the other. It's like the people of town have, forgotten against race. They've forgotten about politics. They, when you go somewhere, and I will say this, the time that I spent working, as an engineer, I spent 38 years with the Department of Defense. So as you can imagine, we have emergency plans for every single thing that could potentially happen, and you just pull a notebook off the shelf and you know what to do. Well, the emergency people here had a good book because the response has been tremendous. I can go in Englewood and stop in a parking lot and wash my clothes where they have set up mobile laundries. There's multiple places that have sanitation places. A lot of porta potties, a lot of places to wash up, but also hot showers. Where they brought in semi trucks that's just made of hot showers. The Army National Guard, I know, was in at least 3 places in Englewood, passing out ice, water, tarps, food, whatever you wanted. And no one asks questions. They don't ask, are you here? Are you from the neighborhood? Do you have power? Nothing. It's just people helping.
They certainly don't ask if you're a Republican or a Democrat or your race is or anything. They just say, you're a human being. We're helping you, right?
And I mean, you got to throw kudos out there. I mean, we have 2 McDonald's in our town. They pulled in. I've never seen it. It was a semi truck. They opened up the side of it like a huge food truck. They served meals. I think it was 8 hours a day, free for over a week. I mean, that's a lot. When you see furniture stores that have damage and they know that their roof was compromised, so they just give away mattresses to anybody that needs them. I've seen grocery stores open, and just give away bread and ice and whatnot. So, yes, the goodness of humanity comes around. But, there's the bad guys, and it's out there trying to take advantage of people. So, everybody has to be aware of those. There's good resources. If you're ever in a storm like this, I just found this out. It's called Operation Blue Roof. It's run by the United States Corps of Engineers. So it's paid for by our tax dollars. Disaster, you just call them. They'll come put the tarps on your roof. They come out, they look, they assess what needs to be done, and they will make your home watertight and windtight from the top. And there's no cost for that service, but you've got people riding around town just nailing down tarps, willy-nilly, if you will, and charging people a fortune. We had an instance at my house where the power pole beside my house was broken in half and fell away from the house, thankfully. But in the meantime, it snatched all of the power wires and cables and everything else over. And so we needed to get that fixed. You couldn't find electricians anywhere. They're all busy. So, it was a friend of a friend that absolutely wasn't a licensed electrician, but still it was a friend helping us out. It got power restored. My neighbor needed tarps. I had tarps. Somebody else had something, another material. People's cutting up everybody else's trees, helping everybody else drag them to the street. So, you see neighbors helping neighbors. That
you see the best of human nature, absolute best of human nature.
You may not have even waved at them in the last 6 months, but you're over there raking their yard.
Isn't that true?
And they're doing things too. So I mean, that's the way it is.
And you know what's probably going to happen, Bruce? You didn't wave at them before, but you probably will as you go forward, because you build a bond when you go through something like that together. You have to.
You have to. It's bringing the neighborhoods together. I see that. I think it's bringing the town together. But yeah, everybody wants to rebuild, and that's the way it's going. It's just going to be a hard road to get back.
So let me ask you this. You were talking about your son. So you're at Scott's house, and he lives how far from you?
Scott lives about 30 minutes from me. He lives in the northern edge of what's called Punta Gorda. He's closer to the direct center line than I was.
He was by himself, and
yes.
you and Marilyn, you got kids all over, you got family. Nobody knew whether you were alive or dead. I had to know for a while, wondering if you were okay. So tell me about that, and when you finally talked to your family, or he talked to his family, and just tell me how that went.
I left my house as soon as after sun up, and we kind of looked around and saw what was what. We knew we had no connectivity to anything, so we decided we would try to get to Scott's house and see how he was doing. Flooded roads, street lamps, power poles. Anyway, we couldn't get there. Come to find out, he had tried to do the same thing. He left his house a little before sunup and was heading down, driving down through the water, trying to figure out exactly where the street was, looking at mailboxes or whatnot. And as he turned the corner 1 block from his house, he said he saw some lights, and he showed me the video. An alligator was swimming across the street. So he decided he would stay put. If you're looking on, like Bruce, if you look on a map there, where you're talking about where we live, there's a bridge that goes over the Mayaca River. And it's, it's a kind of a hump type style bridge. So everybody from Englewood and west of the Mayaca River was driving and sitting on top of the bridge to get cell signals, to the point that the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office dispatched cars out there to sit with their lights on to warn caution. And so basically, just through actions of people in the community, a 2-lane in both direction bridge became 1 lane in each direction, because the interior lanes was used for people to stop and talk on their cell phones to call their families.
Wow, I hadn't even thought about that. And
so
it's just important for you to talk to them as it was for them to hear from you, I'm sure. I mean, whatever your family, you want to tell them you're okay.
Yep, and those kind of ties is what gets you through. And I mean, the other kudos in this community and stuff, though, like the big box stores, Walmart. We've got all the different towns here. There's about 3 different ones that I can think of, but they were back up and running basically the next day for people to get in and get what they needed. Now, I know Englewood was down another extra day because it had got into their ceiling and blew their ceiling tiles out all over the store, so they had to have extra crews to clean that up before they could open the doors. But all of them has put extra porta potties and cleaning stations and whatever they can do for the public out there. I mean, when they first started opening, they was operating cash only because nothing on the internet worked at all. And I know they had that fixed before the end of the first day. So, gas stations, slowly started coming back online. But, the stores and the restaurants and things that serve the community on a daily basis, for the most part, I think has done a tremendous job getting back up and running. There's a restaurant in Englewood. If you're over there, eat there. It's called Nicola's. It's an Italian restaurant. They was preparing entrees and passing them out in their parking lot for people. I mean,
unbelievable.
I don't know. Yeah,
unbelievable.
It is, and out from under it. So,
how long were you without power, Bruce? A week or several days? I know, right?
I'm thinking 8.
8 days. Yeah. So, were you able to stay in your home those 8 days, or did you go somewhere else, or what did you do? You and Marilyn.
We stayed home. We had, we lost power, so we had pre-prepared. We had a generator, and we hooked that up to run, refrigeration, critical things. You can't run air conditioning and stuff like that, but, so we stayed there. Then the water went out, so we had no water pressure. But, we prepared for that. So, we could flush toilets and stuff with a bucket of water from the pool or whatnot. We had drinking water. And then as soon as the storm was over, of course, drinking water and ice was very prevalent from all the emergency agencies. So it really didn't create that bad of a hardship. And then the water pressure come back, I'd say, on about day 4 or 5 after the storm. But we was under a boil order until sometime yesterday. So now that's been lifted. So utilities other than internet and getting all the cable systems, the cell towers back up, utility-wise, we're back good.
They were actually bringing in portable cell towers, right? Didn't I read that they were? Was that happening in your area, or was that other areas, or what?
No, you did. I have seen several of them. I actually took a picture of one that was by Verizon on the way by here. I know there's been several instances of, downlinks from Starlink or Eon's system. But all of the major carriers, Verizon, AT&T, Mobile, but all of the major carriers I have seen portable cells going in.
Right.
So it's getting better. Every day it gets better.
It's incredible what you're telling me, that they were able to get people there that quick and help there. And what you're saying is pretty heartwarming.
There's a group that's like Samaritan something another.
Samaritan's Purse.
That's it.
Franklin Graham.
Purse.
Yeah.
They are in here, and they're in the neighborhoods. They're helping people that need help.
Yeah.
When I go up to Sarasota last week to get gas, that's a 45-minute drive, so that's where we had to get gas the first week. On the way down, we passed, I think it was a 7-truck convoy from Joyce Meyer's ministry, and they was headed into Salvation Army has been everywhere, with hot food trucks.
Yeah. Samaritan's Purse is run by Franklin Graham, who's Billy Graham's son. And I had heard on the radio, it's all those people are volunteers. I mean, they're just people that are helping these ministries come down, and they just spending their time and getting there to help. What a story. I mean, you realize how important that is, right, when you're in the middle of that.
I mean, like I said, I have seen them. I saw them today. When I was out, I saw them at a house pulling tarps. There must have been 8 men tarping this roof. Like I said, one day we decided we would ride to the beach to see if it was still there. And as we was getting close, there was a Salvation Army truck on the corner, and the guy was hawking like he was a hot dog vendor at the baseball game. Hot food, hot dogs. That's what he was yelling.
Is that right?
And, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just like, hey, ball game last week, wasn't he? He was just yelling at the corner, hot food, come get it, hot dogs.
Isn't that amazing? Unreal. Where are you now, Bruce? What's the status of, are you on the road to recovery, or are you seeing the light at the end of the tunnel and all that at this point? I mean, how many days has it been since this hurricane? We're
on day 12.
Okay.
Because it was the 28th.
28th, okay.
Yeah, because Marilyn's birthday was the 29th.
Okay. This thing came in the 28th, and now when I'm talking to you, listeners, when you listen to this, it'll be a different date, but we're on the 10th of October, so we're day 12 here.
You know what, Bruce, right now, today on day 12, at my house, we're back to normal with no internet or, cable TV. We put up an over-the-air antenna signal that helps us get the news and, some limited channels, which is great. But we're pretty much back to normal from the standpoint that we drug most of the debris and cut it up out of the yard. We've still got some more days of that. But right now, we're just kind of secure everything and wait on the insurance and figure out what that covers. And after that, there's a lot of rebuilding to do.
That brings up something else, because you mentioned with your background, you've been kind of temporary hired to go be an adjuster, right? So you're out going to Orlando and all kind of places. Tell me a little bit how that came about. Have you done that before?
This will be the third time.
Okay.
It just, Bruce, you probably don't need to know all this, but the company that was doing insurance adjusting was out of where Dale lives in Iowa. Okay. And they just subcontract with insurance. They need, extra help. And so he told me about them after Hurricane Irma. So I contacted them and got signed on, got an emergency adjuster's license. And so I've got 50 claims. I start Thursday. So Thursday I start with 50 claims and start calling people and going out and climbing on their roofs and writing up estimates for what it's going to cost to fix it.
So you have software you had to download. That's just things people don't think about. They don't have enough adjusters to cover all this, so they got people like Bruce that's got sense enough to do it, that's got the background to do it, and got an emergency adjuster's license, and he's out all of a sudden. He's retired, but he's out adjusting, and I'm sure they're paying you something for that, but you're mainly doing it out of good of your heart to go and help these people so they can get the insurance paid, right?
Yeah, Bruce. When I first started doing it and it approached me, I thought about it because, through those other hurricanes I'd faced in Virginia, I had filed insurance claims. And, being an engineer, I'd sit there and look at their claims sometimes and say, y'all are wrong. My square footage is wrong. You forgot to do this.
Right.
And so I see it as a way that I know what people's damages are. I know what the repair is. And there's software that absolutely helps. There's software a lot of people don't even realize is out there.
Well, I'm sure.
I could do a roof assessment without ever going to your house because the satellite images are that good.
Right.
The satellite images of your house. I can download it and it'll give me every dimension of a house. So it makes it easy to get the job done and get a lot of people, treated quick.
The problem is you have to have internet to do that, right?
That's it. So that's why I'm hoping. If not, I'll have workarounds.
So one of the things that was very poignant to me that you posted on social media the other day, and at some point you were able to get Spotty some pictures up and stuff, and of course we were watching you. You went out to the beach, and after all of that terrible storm, and you just described it, it was dark, you didn't know what was going on, the wind was blowing like you've never seen it in your life, and then all of a sudden you snap your fingers almost, and it's a beautiful day in paradise. With all that stuff behind you, paradise is still here, and it's beautiful again, and somehow there's a lesson in that. And that's what struck me, is that when all the terror and horror you went through, when all of it passed, although you were left with all the stuff you had to clean up and all the damage and all the broken lives and all that, it was a new day. And that's kind of like life, isn't it? I mean, did you think about it? You had to think about that when going through all that and just seeing the beauty of that beach and where you were. Just tell me what you were thinking.
It was, Bruce. And I also have this parallel, I guess, with your business and the view from the hearse, because, your entire career, you've dealt with grief and loss. So you have that sense of loss and you have that grief. But unlike the grief you dealt with, we get to see the next day. You get to rebuild. Perfect example. We bought this house when I got here. We picked it. We've been in it now close to 10 years. And my wife hates the color. That's all it is to it. She don't like the outside color of our house. And she wants to paint it. But you can't paint it because the roof is a certain color. So you can't paint it in conflict with your roof. Well, now we get to pick a new roof and a new color. We don't have the other guy's style fence anymore. We pick out our fence. So you start new, That's all you can do.
You could find the rainbow after the storm, right? You have to reach for it, but it's there.
That's there. I mean, as an example, I know I needed to add a lot more insulation to my roof, in the attic because of the heat and the air conditioning bills. And that was in the plan for this cool season, this winter. And we've been debating on how we was going to get access to all those points. Well, now I can take off a sheet of plywood. I can access all I want. So I can do that job now a whole lot simpler than I could before. So, yeah, there's, you got to look at the good side and you got to rebuild.
Yeah, and no matter what storm you go through in life, the storm will pass, and you have to pick up the pieces and move on. It happens to all of us. We all go through storms, not a hurricane like that, but a hurricane in other ways, and you know what I'm talking about. And you think
I do.
You think the world is going to end, but it doesn't.
When the storm starts and it gets so strong, I mean, I have never seen winds like that. It was raining so hard we couldn't see the end of the driveway. It looked like he was in a blizzard, just total whiteout. You couldn't see. And I mean, we didn't take water, but my street is a major drainage. We had whitecaps going down the street. You'd hear it roar. You hear tornadoes like a freight train coming through or something, but you just hear this wind. And I mean, the sound is, I can't describe it, but I know this, 150 mile an hour is a lot of wind. And, if you think about your trees outside, next time you go to the nursery, buy you a tree and tie it standing up in the back of your pickup truck and drive down the road at 70 mile an hour for an hour and see what you got left. You stick your arm out the window of your car at 80 mile an hour and see how fast it flies backwards on you. And now you're going to double that.
Right.
So 150 mile an hour, I never thought I'd see. I don't ever want to see it again. I mean, you could feel concrete walls move. They wasn't going to go down, but you could feel them.
If you had it to do over again, would you stay there?
I would. I'd just make sure I had a better radio.
Yeah.
Because we could get over-the-air radio signals, but built to get a radio. So that's my correction for next time. But like I said in the beginning, Chris, you run from the water, you hide from the wind. So if they told me the wind was going to blow, I'm going to be here. If they tell me the water's coming up, I'm gone.
Yeah. So you knew what you were doing.
That's the way.
God bless you, man. I'm just glad that you guys are okay and you're sitting here telling the story. I can't even imagine what you've been through, and I know people don't understand what you've been through. To have this conversation with you, I know there's going to be a lot of people listening to this, and some people look at the news. Why would you stay there? Well, you just said it. You knew where you were. You knew if you could hide from the wind, and you knew you weren't going to get overrun by water. But some people stayed that didn't understand all that too, and as you know, they were in places where they were going to drown, and they did.
The people, like I said, if they say evacuate because of water, you do it. If you're in a mobile home, don't stay there. You can't deal 74 miles an hour in a mobile home. You shouldn't, because I've seen what happens to them. But yeah, you got to know what you are, and you got to have a plan, and you got to know, what you're going to do next. I read this today on some little blurb I saw that a lot of the people in the area that caught the blunt of the storm from the storage surge, and where they had a lot of people die and a lot of that very extensive damage. The people said they didn't leave because they didn't trust the government. I heard that today. And in a disaster situation, they're not lying to you. So, I mean, there was people that really did say, no, the government's lying to me. We don't need to evacuate. They just want us out of here and refused to leave. And some of them paid for that.
Viewing life from a hearse, it could be worse. Laugh, think, and cry with the country undertaker.